What is up, farming family? How y'all doing today? Today, we're getting into the top 10 or my top 10 paddles that I would use right now if I went to a tournament. Technically top 11. I also have some paddles I'm going to shout out at the end on why they didn't make the list or why, I would recommend them even though they didn't make my top 10. I have codes for most of these paddles. They'll be in the comment section pinned, and they'll also be in the description if you're interested in those. I'm not going to go through and name off my codes for every paddle. That would just be annoying to you and to me. But let's get into this. Number 10 is the prodrive Ghost. Like I said in the review for that paddle, the drives and the serves on that felt amazing. You got so much pop and so much power with that paddle. It was unreal, and it's mostly due to it's completely due basically to the Kevlar core. Overall, it was just a really fun paddle. And I was bouncing between it and the Q-Def Viva Pro 2. The Viva Pro 2 swing weight's a little too heavy for me, so I put this one at number 10 instead of putting it there. But just know that I had those two teetering back and forth, and which one to put on the list. For number 9, you're going to notice this list is going to be packed full of elongated and hybrid shaped paddles. I'm not like strictly one or the other. I do it based off of feel. And for number 9, 6-0 double black diamond 16mm is my go-to. It's stiffer at the face than some of the other, Generation 2 raw carbon fiber paddles, and it has a decent amount of power, probably the most powerful out of all the hybrid versions. I'm not really a power person or looking for power paddles, but if I had to choose a power paddle, this would definitely be on the list. And I don't know if you've noticed this, or you will notice this, but my bottom 3 or 4 will generate a decent amount of power compared to the ones that are in my top 5. My number 8, okay, I reviewed this paddle a while back. It is a really good, stable paddle. You could recommend it to a lot of people due to the price. It's the Vatic Pro Flash 16mm. It's a really good paddle. I don't think it has as much power as the Double Black Diamond from 6-0, the 16mm, but it does have a decent amount of power. It does lean more to power than control. I haven't played with it in a little bit, but the few games that I did get to play with it a couple weeks ago, it did feel really, really nice. So it still makes this list as an overall good paddle, and it's hard to beat it for the price too, like with most of Vatic's paddles. Number 7 would be the R1 Pulsar, another hybrid shaped paddle. Okay, when this came out and the R3 Pulsar came out, I played with both of them, and one of them felt drastically better than the other one to me. Now, I'm not saying that this one felt bad by any means. It just didn't feel as good as the R3 Pulsar, so it landed lower on the list. Some of you guys may want to interchange it and have the R1 Pulsar up towards the top, which leads me to the next thing. If you have a top 10 list, comment down below. I'm very curious, and I'm sure everyone else would like to know, because there may be paddles that I haven't even reviewed that are in your top 10, and that'll let other people, know what they're about, and then they can go and research it themselves, because other reviewers might have reviews on them. Okay, this one jumped down a couple of spots recently. It's the Bread and Butter Filth. This would be my number 6. At one point, I had it tied for number 4. It's a really stable paddle. The graphics on it are really cool. The ownership's really good. If you reach out to them, they'll reply instantly. It's just a really good all-around paddle. When this paddle came out, it was basically advertised as a less powerful Carbon 1X or Legacy Pro, which at the time people were having problems controlling the Carbon 1Xs and Legacy Pros. So this is what people would recommend in place of those two paddles if you had a problem with it. So this still makes it on my list because it's an overall fun paddle to play with and to look at. You're always going to get comments when it comes to the looks of this paddle. For number 5, I was very skeptical about this the first few games I played with it. It's the Pickleball Apes Proline S. For a hybrid version, it has a really high swing weight compared to other hybrid versions, but I have elongated versions on here that I enjoyed, so it's not like that can be a gripe or anything. But whenever I tried the original Proline, the elongated version, it felt weird to me. It was too thin, and it was a fun paddle. It just wasn't for me. The Proline S is a hybrid version, and it's more my style, so it definitely made this list. I have a lot of fun with this paddle. I don't have a review out for it. Stay tuned for that. The release date, I think, is October 2nd. But yeah, it's a fun paddle to play with. My number 4, at one point, this and the bread and butter filth were tied, and I couldn't tell you exactly which one I would prefer. But after playing with them more and more, and after the Pickleball Apes Pro Line S came out, I realized this one was definitely number 4. I just like the overall feel of it. I like the top of it a lot, the way it's curved. It's completely different than other elongated paddles. It feels really good. It's an all-around paddle. I've heard other people say it's the strongest, paddle in pickleball. I don't think that's the case. I think it's an all-around paddle that you can use if you're wanting to control the ball and have some power at the same time. Because most elongated paddles are going to have enough weight mass at the end of them that they're going to be somewhat power, especially if you're driving or, putting a full swing into it. Number 3A. Actually, I'm going to go with 3B first. 3B is the R1 Nova. You've recently saw me do a review on that. I consider it a Gen 1.5. The exterior has a grid that lets pressure out from the polypropylene honeycomb core, which basically makes core crushing and stuff like that less likely to happen. 3A would be the R3 Nova, which I like the R3 Pulsar, and I knew when I got the R3 Nova that I was going to really enjoy it. It feels lighter in the hands than the R3 Pulsar does. I could tell that swinging it. And overall, the face feels stiffer to me, but it doesn't have as much power as the Pulsar series does. Overall, it's a really good paddle. I feel like it leans slightly more to control than some of these other paddles on the list, which you're going to notice that with the ones right above this for number 2 and number 1. Number 2, okay, for the longest time, this was my number 1 paddle. In my opinion, it has the highest spin in pickleball. I love using it. It is one of the more controllable Generation 2 raw carbon fiber paddles. For that reason, it will always be on my list because some of the Generation 2 raw carbon fiber paddles are a little bit harder to control. I don't think this one is, and it would be the Ronbus R3 Pulsar. Basically my review, I basically didn't say anything bad about it. I can't think of anything about this paddle that I don't like. I know when I did the twist weight numbers, it was down in the bottom half of twist weight for the sweet spot. But when you're playing with it, you can't tell, a difference between it and some of the ones that are slightly higher. So this definitely makes my list as number 2, because for the longest time it was number 1. Number 1 is the Vatic Prism Flash. Okay, you cannot beat a $100 paddle without my code or anyone else's code. That is a mix of power and control. Like, let's say you struggled with the Generation 2 raw carbon fiber paddles, but you wanted something that had a little more power and pop than, like the Model E and the regular carbon ones. Boom. Vatic released the Prism Flash. It is literally like Gen 1 and Gen 2 had a baby. So it is hard for me to really recommend other paddles. So when most people are like, oh, what paddle should I get? I'm just like, Vatic Prism Flash. Vatic Prism Flash. And they're like, okay, for a budget. I'm like, Vatic Prism Flash. It is such a good, well-built paddle for the price. And when I go to tournaments, that's what I've been using recently. So that's why it's my number 1. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed my top 10 list. I hope you will share yours down below. There were other paddles that didn't make this list. Legacy Pro didn't make it. I haven't tried their paddle since they've changed factories. Carbon 1X has been having a lot of delamination issues, so I would not put them on the list. Electron Model E Elite was a really, really good paddle, but it was right outside of my top 10. There's a bunch of other paddles that are thermoform foamed edge that are pretty cheap paddles. 11624's got a nice thermoform 16 millimeter that's a really, really good price. Hugh Def's paddles, they have the Apex Pro, the Viva Pro 2. Those are good price paddles. The Triple J paddle right here, the Judge, they've got 3 paddles that are Gen 2. They're $120 without my code, FarmerPB. I got reviews coming out on those, so stay tuned. But until next time, stay safe, have a good day, drink plenty of water. Peace, y'all.